Saturday morning in Boston's suburbs began as usual. Jane went shopping with the kids, and I finally got around to tackling the garage. For the last few months, my wife hadn't stopped reminding me that it was time to put things in order there. "Robert, this isn't a garage anymore. It's a warehouse for old things," she would say every time, parking the car in the driveway. I started with the far corner, where boxes of things we'd brought from our old apartment were piled up. Most of them hadn't been opened even once since the move. Dust swirled in the rays of morning sunlight streaming through the small window. I sneezed, wiped sweat, and methodically went through box after box. Throw away. Donate. Keep. I sorted items into piles until I came across a worn cardboard box with no labels. Inside were old notes, university textbooks, and a bundle of yellowed letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. I froze, recognizing the handwriting on the top envelope. That elegant slant of letters was unmistakable. Samantha. With trembling hands, I untied the ribbon. The first letter began with the words, "Dear Rob." My heart beat faster. I sank down onto an old folding chair nearby. Under the letters, I found photographs. Samantha and me in the park, at the beach, near the university campus. Young, carefree, in love. "God," I muttered, looking at a photo where we're laughing, sitting on the hood of my old Honda. Now Samantha is my mother-in-law, Jane's mother, a respected woman, grandmother to my children. Every Christmas and Thanksgiving we meet at the same table, exchange pleasantries, talk about weather and politics. And no one except us two knows that once there was a passionate love between us. "Dad, where are you?" My daughter's voice made me start. "In the garage," I called back, hastily putting the letters back in the box. "Mom asks if you can help bring in the shopping." "Coming, sweetheart." For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. Jane was saying something about sales. The kids were sharing school news, and I nodded absently, my thoughts returning to the found letters. During dinner, my wife announced, "Next weekend we're having a barbecue. Mom promised to make her signature apple pie." I nearly choked. Samantha would be here. The thought of the upcoming meeting caused a strange excitement. "Honey, you seem distracted today," Jane noticed. "Probably tired. Been cleaning the garage all day," I lied, avoiding her gaze. "Find anything interesting?" "No, nothing special. Old textbooks, some notes." In the evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat long in my study, supposedly working on reports. In reality, I just stared at the dark window, remembering. First meeting Samantha in the university cafeteria, her infectious laugh, the scent of jasmine perfume, our endless conversations about literature and life. Who could have known that years later I would become her daughter's husband? "Rob, are you coming to bed?" Jane called. "Yes, just finishing up," I replied, closing the laptop. At night, I tossed and turned sleeplessly. Fragments of memories, old conversations, unfulfilled plans kept spinning in my head. "Are you okay?" Jane asked drowsily. "Yes, just thinking about work," I lied again, feeling a pang of guilt. A week remained until the barbecue. 7 days to decide how to behave when meeting Samantha. It was in the early 90s, second year of economics, part-time job at the university library, dreams of Wall Street. Every Friday, I attended optional modern literature classes solely because they were taught by Samantha Parker. "Mr. Anderson, you're daydreaming again," she loved to say, catching my gaze. "Perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts about Hemingway with the group?" She was 26, I was 19. The age difference seemed like an abyss, but this very unattainability made her even more attractive. She always looked impeccable, strict pencil skirts, silk blouses, hair gathered in an elegant bun. A real lady, not a student in jeans and t-shirt. It all started with an innocent conversation after class. I lingered, pretending to gather my notes. "You have an interesting perspective on the old man and the sea, Robert," she said then. "Would you like to discuss it over coffee?" We sat in the cafeteria until closing time, talked about literature, music, politics. She listened to my naive reasoning with genuine interest. "You're remarkably mature for your age," she noted when we walked to the parking lot. "Maybe we could switch to first names?" I dared. "There are no other students here." She hesitated, then smiled. "All right, Rob." That's how our secret meetings began. After classes, we would walk around campus for hours, discussing books we'd read. One day it started raining, and we took shelter in an empty classroom. Raindrops drummed against the window, and we stood so close I could smell her perfume. "This is a bad idea," she whispered when I touched her hand. But she didn't pull away. Our first kiss was like an electric shock. All barriers crumbled in an instant. We met in her small apartment on the outskirts of town. Listened to jazz, cooked dinner, gave in to passion. You know, she said once, lying on my shoulder, sometimes I forget you're my student. And I forget you're my teacher. We lived in our little world where age difference and social conventions didn't exist, but reality always finds a way to remind us of itself. At the end of the semester, Samantha received an offer from Stanford. This is the chance of my lifetime, Rob, she said, showing me the letter. Postdoctoral program, prospects. I can transfer, I suggested. California has economics departments too. She shook her head. No, darling, this is better. We're different. Your whole life is ahead of you. But I love you. And I love you. That's exactly why I have to let you go. We spent the last night together, and in the morning she left, leaving only a note. Thank you for the happiness. Goodbye. I couldn't get myself together for a long time. Studies, work, everything felt like moving through a fog. But time heals. After a couple of years, the pain dulled, leaving only warm memories. I graduated university, got a job at an investment company. Life was getting better. Then I met Jane, a sweet girl from the marketing department. She was the complete opposite of Samantha, cheerful, straightforward, without any mystery. We had been dating for 6 months when she suggested introducing me to her parents. They're wonderful, she chirped. Especially Mom. You'll get along great. She loves books too. That evening I stood on the Parkers' porch with a bottle of wine in my hands. The door opened. Meet Robert, Jane said happily. Samantha froze in the doorway. We stared at each other, unable to speak. Very nice to meet you, she finally managed, extending her hand. That evening was like a surrealist play. We sat at the same table, maintained polite conversation, smiled, and silently agreed never to mention the past. The barbecue day turned out surprisingly warm for early autumn. Jane bustled in the kitchen since morning, preparing salads and marinating meat. Honey, check if there's enough charcoal for the grill, she called out while cutting tomatoes. I mechanically followed my wife's instructions, mentally rehearsing the upcoming meeting with Samantha. By 2 o'clock, guests started arriving. Neighbors, Jane's colleagues, family friends, our backyard gradually filled with voices and laughter. Mom wrote they're almost here, Jane announced, checking her phone. I was standing by the grill, flipping burgers, when I heard a familiar voice. Hello, everyone. Tom, Samantha's husband, was shaking hands with guests, holding a bottle of wine in his other hand. And she looked stunning. The blue dress accentuated her figure, sun playing in her hair. Time had no power over her beauty. Grandma! Our twins rushed to Samantha with hugs. My sweethearts, she knelt down, embracing the grandchildren. How's school? What's new? I watched this scene, feeling a strange heaviness in my chest. She's a wonderful grandmother, caring mother-in-law, loving wife. Robert, your burgers are burning, someone among the guests noticed. Damn! I hastily flipped the blackened patties. Need help? Her voice behind me made me start. The familiar jasmine scent. She hadn't changed her perfume all these years. Thanks, I'm managing, I replied without turning around. You seem tense, she said quietly. Did something happen? I took a breath, found old letters and photographs. She froze. I could hear her breathing quicken. I see, she finally said. We need to talk. Why? Everything's in the past. Because you can't stop looking at me, and I notice it. She was right. All evening I caught myself searching for her in the crowd of guests. Tomorrow, Oak Street Cafe at 2, she said and walked away, leaving me alone with the smoking grill. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I smiled, maintained conversations, played with kids, and counted minutes until tomorrow. It was a nice evening, Jane said as we got ready for bed. I mumbled something in response, pretending to be sleepy. The morning dragged endlessly. I lied to my wife about an important client meeting. On Sunday, strange, she wondered. They're from Europe, different time zone, I improvised. I arrived at the cafe half an hour early, ordered coffee but couldn't take a single sip. She appeared exactly at 2. Elegant, composed, only her fingers fidgeting with her purse strap betrayed her nervousness. Hello, Rob, she called me as only she used to call me back then. Hi, Samantha. We sat in silence, not knowing where to begin. Tom's on a business trip, she suddenly said. Come to my place. We need to talk seriously. It was madness, but I nodded. Everything in her house breathed comfort and warmth. Photos on the walls, Jane as a child, family holidays, our wedding. Whiskey, she asked, taking out glasses. Yes. The alcohol slightly dulled the tension. We talked about the past, about how our lives had turned out. Remember our last evening? She asked. Every minute. She came closer. Too close. We shouldn't, I whispered. I know. Her breath burned my neck. And then time stopped. Reality dissolved in touches, whispers, kisses. 20 years vanished like smoke. Her touch burned my skin. The room spun in a whirlpool of feelings. Passion, accumulated over years, broke free. We dissolved in each other, forgetting about time and space. Her whisper, jasmine scent, silk of skin, everything merged into one mad moment. We were like two travelers lost in time, finding each other after an eternity. Every touch told a story of unfulfilled love. Every kiss was a confession of what had never been said aloud. Returning home, I felt like the worst scoundrel. Every passerby seemed to read traces of betrayal on my face. Jane was watching some series in the living room. "How was the meeting?" she asked absent-mindedly. "Fine," I mumbled, heading to the shower. I wanted to wash away not just the scent of foreign perfume, but also the feeling of guilt. Hot streams beat against my shoulders, but Samantha's face stayed before my eyes. What had we done? How could we now look our family in the eyes? At night, I couldn't sleep. Tossed and turned, got up for water, lay back down. "Honey, you're so restless," Jane mumbled sleepily, hugging me. I flinched at her touch. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Numbers and reports swam before my eyes. An important presentation turned into torture. "Anderson, are you all right?" my boss asked after the meeting. "You're not yourself today." The phone remained silent. Samantha didn't call or write, as if nothing had happened. Friday brought another family dinner, a tradition impossible to refuse without a compelling reason. "Mom's making lasagna," Jane announced happily. "Your favorite." The mere thought of the upcoming meeting made me nauseous. "Maybe we should cancel," I suggested. "Getting a headache?" "What?" "Mom's cooking specially. And Dad's back from his business trip." "Tom, I had completely forgotten about him. How could I look him in the eye now?" All day I invented excuses, but they all sounded pathetic and unconvincing. At 7 in the evening, we arrived at her parents' house. Windows glowed welcomingly. Smoke rose from the chimney. Samantha opened the door. Perfect makeup, elegant dress, friendly smile. Nothing betrayed her anxiety. "Come in, dears!" She hugged Jane, nodded to me. "Tom, look who's here." "Good to see you, old man." Tom firmly shook my hand. "How's work?" I mumbled something in response, avoiding his gaze. Dinner turned into exquisite torture. We sat across from each other, maintained casual conversation, smiled. "Robert, you're barely eating," Jane noticed. "Is your head really hurting?" "Yes, a bit," I lied, poking at my plate with a fork. "I have excellent painkillers." Samantha stood up. "I'll bring them." "I'll get them." I stood too. "Where are they?" "In the bathroom cabinet." She looked me straight in the eyes. She caught up with me in the corridor. "We need to talk," she whispered. "Not here, not now." "Then where? When?" "I don't know. I really didn't know." Returning to the table, I swallowed the pill, washing it down with wine. "Feeling better?" Jane asked caringly. "Much better." Another lie. After dinner, Tom suggested whiskey. "To family!" he proclaimed a toast. "To family!" everyone echoed. The glass trembled in my hand. At home, Jane snuggled up to me. "Maybe you should see a doctor. You've been strange lately." "Just tired. Lots of work." I stared at the ceiling and thought, how long can one live in lies? A week later, Samantha sent a message. "Need to meet. Important." Short text, but my hands shook. I delayed responding all day. In the evening, I wrote, "Riverview Park tomorrow at noon. A public place seems safer. Fewer temptations. Fewer opportunities for mistakes." She was already waiting on a bench by the pond. Strict pantsuit, hair in a ponytail, a true businesswoman. "Hi," I sat nearby, maintaining distance. "How are you?" "Perfect," she smirked bitterly. "Just wonderful. Can't sleep at night, avoid my husband, and jump every time my daughter calls." Ducks on the pond started a noisy fuss. We silently watched them. "This can't continue," she finally said. "We need to decide what to do next." "Are there options?" I tried to speak calmly. "There are always options, Rob." "What kind? Leave everything and run away? At our age?" "Why not? We love each other." These words took my breath away. For the first time in all these years, she said it aloud. "Love?" I asked. "Or are we mistaking ghosts of the past for real feelings?" She turned to me. "What happened between us? It's not just memories." "I know," I admitted, "but we have obligations, families, children." "Whom we betrayed," her voice trembled. A young couple with strollers walked by. Twins, like our kids with Jane. "Tom is a good man," Samantha said after a pause. "He doesn't deserve this." "Neither does Jane." You know what's the scariest part? She looked at the pond. I don't feel remorse, only guilt towards my daughter. I do feel remorse, I confessed, and it's killing me. Silence fell again. Wind rustled in the tree crowns. Remember what you told me then, 20 years ago? She suddenly asked. What exactly? I love you. Let's drop everything and leave. I remember, I smiled involuntarily. I was young, passionate. And I answered that it would be better this way, that you had your whole life ahead of you. You were right. She shook her head. Was I? Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe we're being given a second chance. I took her hand. No, Samantha, this isn't a chance. This is temptation. She didn't pull her hand away, but didn't squeeze mine in return. You know what I realize these days? She said quietly. We can't betray our family. We already have. All the more reason not to continue. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. You were always stronger than me, I said. Not true. I was just better at pretending. We sat by the pond for a long time, holding hands, allowing ourselves this closeness one last time. Goodbye, Rob, she stood up, and forgive me for everything. Goodbye, Samantha. I watched her walk down the alley, straight back, precise steps. Only at the very end did she turn and wave, just like 20 years ago. 6 months passed. Life gradually returned to its usual course, though something had subtly changed. Samantha and I learned to be just mother-in-law and son-in-law again. The awkwardness hadn't gone away, but became familiar like old furniture. For Thanksgiving, Jane insisted on a family dinner. Mom's been kind of sad lately, she said. Maybe she's tired? I stayed silent. Over these months, I had become a master of eloquent silence. Tom met us at the door. Come in. Samantha's in the kitchen working her magic on the turkey. The house smelled of cinnamon and apple pie. Everything as usual, everything like before. Dad, help set the table, daughter called. I was laying out silverware when Samantha came out of the kitchen with a large platter. Our eyes met for a moment. Thank you, she said simply, and we both knew it wasn't about help with the table setting. At the table, Tom talked about his new job. Jane shared plans for renovating the children's room. The twins boasted about school achievements. Grandma, we joined the drama club. Wonderful, darlings, Samantha smiled, and for the first time in a long while, the smile reached her eyes. I watched her furtively. She had lost weight but looked peaceful, serene. Tom, you'll tell them about Europe? Jane asked. Oh, yes. Samantha and I have been invited to a conference in Paris. We'll celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary while there. How romantic, daughter exclaimed. Isn't it, Mom? Yes, dear, very romantic. Her voice didn't waver. Only her fingers gripped the napkin tighter. After dinner, the men traditionally retired to the study. Tom took out cigars. You know, he said, lighting a cohiba, I've been wanting to thank you. For what? I tensed. For Samantha. These past 6 months, it's like she's come alive. Started writing again, took up yoga. I mumbled something unintelligible. I suppose you talked to her then in autumn. She was so depressed. Me? No, what are you? Come on. He patted my shoulder. You're an excellent son-in-law and friend. I felt nausea rising in my throat. In the living room, Jane was showing her mother photos from their last vacation. Darling, you look so much like me when I was young, Samantha said. Really? I thought I took after Dad more. No, you're definitely my daughter, just as stubborn and romantic. Mom! They laughed, and in that laughter was that special closeness that only mother and daughter can share. Saying goodbye, Samantha hugged Jane. Take care of yourself, dear, and take care of Robert. Of course, Mom. See you at Christmas? Definitely. In the car, Jane said, How nice that we have such a close family. I nodded, looking at the road. At home, putting the kids to bed, I lingered by the photo on the wall. Our wedding, happy faces, Samantha in the role of mother-in-law. What are you thinking about? Jane hugged me from behind. About how strangely life turns out. Strangely. And beautifully, I added, kissing the top of her head. That night, I stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking about the choices we make, about roads not taken, about how sometimes you need to lose something twice to understand its true value. They say you can't step into the same river twice. We tried and nearly drowned, but we got out, and now we know exactly the price of our choice. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.